Okay, again, great to see so many people from many different organizations and dialing in from all over the country. I'm based in Adelaide, so I would like to start today's webinar by acknowledging the Kaurna people as the traditional custodians of the Adelaide region and Adelaide Plains. And I also recognise the traditional owners of wherever you may be calling in from as well. I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and I extend that respect to any First Nations people who are present on today's webinar. And with that, welcome to the first webinar hosted by Gathered Here for 2025. And this is all going to be about our Gifts in Wills report. This webinar is a prelude to a more detailed report that is being released later this week, and we will follow up with everyone to get you a copy of that. But for now, we're going to give you an overview of some of the most interesting things we've learned and some data points of interest from analysing 63,000 online wills. So let's get into it. Running through the agenda, first up, we'll do a very brief introduction and then we'll go through an overview of the data. Then we'll dive into some of the major insights, everything from gifting rates and gift sizes through to the most generous demographics, which is definitely something to think about given the long-term play that Gifts in Wills typically is. And I'll also talk to a few interesting trends over time. I'm also going to touch on some of the additional data that we've seen through our collection around probated wills. Gathered Here has an in-house probate team, and they're doing some amazing work in ensuring peace of mind and that will writers' legacies are fulfilled. And at the end of today, we'll wrap up with some of the key learnings of today's webinar. We won't have time for Q&A at the end of today's session, but one of my colleagues is on hand right now to answer any of your questions as we go. Just pop them in the Q&A section of the chat of the Zoom function rather than the chat box, as this makes it much easier for us to keep track of. And if she doesn't get to all the questions asked, we'll obviously follow up with you after the session as well. So let's just jump into a quick intro. It's probably best to let you know who I am. I do see a lot of familiar names on today's session, but for anyone who I haven't had the chance to meet yet, my name is Mike. I'm the head of partner success at Gathered Here. I lead an incredibly driven partner success team whose day-to-day function is really focused on helping our charities access, generate, and realize gifts in wills at scale and to maximize our partners' partnership with our platform. Whether you're an existing partner or not, please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, and I'll be able to answer them for you and also just connect you with the right person otherwise. And in terms of Gathered Here, most of you are familiar with us at this point, which is lovely. But as a bit of an update on where we are, over 75,000 online wills have been written on our platform now, and every single one of them has been completely free. We have a 4.9 out of 5-star customer satisfaction rating, and over 4,000 5-star reviews from verified users have been submitted, provided feedback for our platform. We're trusted by over 850 charities and non-for-profits across every state, sector, and size. We're also growing rapidly in New Zealand, which I'll touch on a little bit later on for some of the Kiwis that have joined us today. And all up, an estimated $950 million has been pledged in gifts written via the Gathered Here platform. So we know people love online wills. We know that charities are rapidly embracing them, and we know that they're here to stay. So let's look into some of the actual data point from the wills themselves. The data we're about to go through is from every will written on the Gathered Here platform between 2021 and the end of 2024. So all 63,375 of them. 17% of those wills included at least one charitable gift, But when we look specifically at wills written by charity supporters, people who arrive on the platform through a charity link, through your campaign efforts or your branded landing page, a huge 43% of those wills included a gift. This really does highlight the importance of your campaign efforts, promoting your bequest program through the year with various methods, participating in Include a Charity Week, as we see a really good chunk of your supporters are including you in their legacy planning, and obviously during a time when writing a will is important to them. We'll go further into the differences between these two types of groups of will writers later on, because it's a really, really important distinction to make. All up, the gifts pledged by wills written by your supporters are an estimated $884 million. The vast majority are residual gifts, so a percentage of the person's estate, and the average gift value was an estimated $63,824. With all of that in mind, let's take a closer look at the data. First of all, there's been a huge growth in wills written via our platform, which tells us that we're providing a service that is genuinely meeting a need. This graph, it separates the wills written by charity supporters and wills written by high intent will writers. We'll be making that distinction a lot throughout this webinar, but just for clarity, known charity supporters are the will writers who arrive on our platform through a charity link or a charity landing page. You'll also see us refer to this group as existing supporters. They're the people who have received an email or a flyer or some sort of promotion from your organization offering them a free will, encouraging them to write a will, and that's how they've arrived at the Gathered Here platform. High intent will writers, on the other hand, are the people who come to Gathered Here to write their will off their own accord. This is us trying to do some of the hard work for you, help you find new confirmed bequesters, and naturally promote your organization or your cause area as something to support. When these types of will writers pledge a gift, we refer to them as new supporters because you've just acquired a brand new supporter through the Gathered Here network. And what we see here is that high intent will writers, they make up the majority of wills written on Gathered Here, about 83% of all wills. And this tells us that online wills are a really, really effective way to reach new audiences. But, and this is very important for our partners who want to remain on our completely free model, or what we call our basic tier, is the number of wills written by existing or known supporters has grown significantly as well. The graph doesn't quite do it justice in terms of what we see from 2021 to 2024, but the growth here is over 2,000% in the number of wills written by charity supporters. This tells us that charity supporters, your known supporters, they see a lot of value in a free online will, and almost 7,000 people chose to write a will at Gathered Here as a result of charity outreach in 2024 alone. Let's take a look at how some of these wills translate into bequest value. So here we're looking at the total value of gifts pledged per year. Again, this is now split by existing supporters and new supporters. And you might have noticed that the two lines have gotten closer together. And that's because existing charity supporters are much more likely to pledge a gift than the high intent will writers, new supporters. So despite only writing 17% of wills, existing charity supporters accounted for 30% of the total gift value. So your existing network can deliver a lot of value if you're able to reach them and communicate that message of the importance of writing and having a will. And then when we look at the full picture, we've seen a 373% increase in gift value from 2021, when online wills were quite new, to end of 2024. And again, we can split that data in terms of partners and non-partners. So as I mentioned earlier, we have over 850 charity partners, but will writers aren't limited to just pledging gifts to the organizations that have partnered with Gathered Here. Will writers, they can pledge a gift to whoever they like, and we see that happening. Around 18% of gift value went to organizations that don't currently partner with Gathered Here, and then the remaining 82% obviously went to organizations that do partner with us. When you look at the growth year on year, you can see that that share is trending towards partners. And in 2024, 85% of gift value was directed towards those partners. So it's fantastic news for anyone who's already partnered with us. They're getting a larger piece of that pie. But for anyone who doesn't, that may have dialed in today, maybe it's a bit of a nudge in the direction to join our network. Let's dive now a little bit further into the actual gifts. The vast majority of gifts are residual. 81% of all gifts via Gathered Here are a residual. And that stayed relatively consistent over the last 4 years, although it did increase to 84% last year, which is the highest we've seen it. And this preference largely comes down to the design of our wills platform. For anyone who isn't familiar with it, we'll share an example of what that looks like. So residual gifts are prioritized because they are typically higher value than monetary or specific item gifts. The average value per residual gift is an estimated $76,288 or 11.5% of the value of a person's estate. We've worked really, really hard on the user experience of our wills platform, making it fast and easy, but very transparent for will writers to better understand how to manage and divide their estate. Leaning into that simplicity and that fairness of dividing an estate means that will writers, their intentions can remain balanced. There's obviously protection against inflation, and this overall can have a greater and typically positive impact for our charity partners. Of course, will writers can obviously leave gifts however they like, and many also choose to leave monetary gifts instead. And when we look at that data, 18% of gifts were monetary gifts, so a set dollar amount. The average monetary gift, less than the residual gift that we see, but still a resounding $8,000. So it's a very, very significant gift. And at a minimum, it's a starting point allowing you to begin to better understand the supporters' intentions with their legacy giving and commence building a relationship with them and the connection and their connection back to your organization. So it's still a very, very significant and meaningful gift. And then finally, we have specific items as well. So only 1% of gifts were specific items, and there was a very broad range in there from what we've seen. Things like real estate and precious jewelry through to sports memorabilia and also mobility equipment. We saw multiple residential properties pledged to charities, indicating future revenues of hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not potentially millions of dollars for those causes. There were also some gifts that were much, much more personal in nature. For example, one will writer pledged their entire drag costume collection to a youth LGBTQIA plus charity. Obviously, this type of gift isn't traditionally going to be considered financially high value, but it's extremely valuable in that it gives that organization an opportunity to connect with that supporter in a meaningful way. We have to remember that almost half of gifts that are, almost half of gifts that are from a specific item-based gift also include a monetary or residual gift. So these items can be used as a way for you to build rapport and establish a personal connection with that supporter. I also want to take some time to talk about age across both wills, but also for gifts as well. I know that's a big topic of discussion for a lot of fundraisers. The traditional golden demographic, the over 65s, they actually wrote 16% of wills on gathered here, which is interestingly the exact same as the percentage of the population who are over 65. So will writing rates among seniors is actually right on track for what we would expect. Expanding that demographic a little bit wider, when we look at wills written by over 55s, they account for over a third of all wills. So we're seeing a really, really significant amount of wills being written by that older demographic. And it's fantastic to see technology solutions like online wills being embraced by this age group who sometimes get an unfair rep around their ability to use tech or adapt to modern ways of doing things. Let's take a look at the gifts from this side of things. There's a slight drop, but overall pretty similar numbers. So 14% of gifts were pledged by over 65s and 32% were pledged by over 55s. I know the age of supporters is really, really important in this line of work, but I do want to stress the importance of not overlooking other supporters just because they may be younger than, again, the traditionally ideal demographic. In a lot of cases, younger people who are writing their wills supporting your organization, they're signaling to your organization that they see you as vitally important. They're communicating their commitment to you, and in a way, they're treating you like family. So there's a lot of scope to bring these supporters closer to your organization if they weren't already part of your network, or if they are an existing supporter, there's so much to learn from that journey that they've gone on to reach that point and apply those lessons moving forward. And what we can see is that 21% of gifts were pledged for each of the 35 to 44 and 45 to 54 age brackets, and under 35s are also signalling their intent to support at least one charity in their will. I also want to have a look at the value of those gifts by age range because obviously the number of gifts doesn't always paint the clearest picture. So over 65s, they pledged a 16% of total gift value, which is equivalent to $141 million. When we expand that and we look at over 55s, they've pledged 33% of gift value, equivalent to $292 million. So large sums of money being pledged by these age groups. Each age group is really balanced. You can see in terms of their gift values with under 35s, the 35s to 55s, and also then the over 55s, each pledging around a third of gift value that we've seen in our platform. And that's because age groups, they have different giving habits. Over 65s, they have the second highest spend per supporter at an estimated $153,979. The chart on the screen here, it shows that the average spend per age range. What's really interesting is we can actually break this down further. So here we've now gone more gradual with that golden age group of over 65s. And there's a really interesting trend here. We can see that once people reach the age of 55, their generosity actually starts to increase again. So that makes sense, right? A lot of people in that 35 to 55 age group, they might be paying for mortgages, they may have kids to think about, as well as other financial pressures. So once they start to move out of that tricky period that I've ironically just entered, we can see that the willingness to support starts to climb again. And when we look at over people who have written a will and are over the age of 85, they're actually got the highest amounts than anyone else, with an average gift size of $193,703 per supporter. Let's take a look at how that translates into actual value. So 65 to 74-year-olds, they pledged $93 million. 75 to 84-year-olds, they pledged $35.4 million. and over 85s pledged an estimated $13.3 million. Again, this represents 16% of total gift value of wills written on our platform. Okay, let's move on to gifting numbers. So one of the clearest trends we've seen is around the number of gifts pledged per bequester, which pleasingly has increased year on year. In 2024, each bequester pledged an average of 2.9 gifts, which is up from 1.4 in 2021 when we got started. And this is fantastic because it's clear that we have a situation where rising tides lifts all boats, right? More will riders are supporting more charity organizations. And when the effort of one charity pays off and they receive a gift in their will, it's likely that two other charities will also benefit. The non-for-profit sector has always been incredibly collaborative with sharing wins and learnings. It's one of the things that I really like working within this sector. And it's just one more reason to do that with online wills. It's proof that the success of others can greatly benefit your organization and vice versa. And by attracting supporters to write their will through your campaign efforts, we will see will writers typically resonating with similar organizations in your cause area or other cause areas as well, leading to that spike in gifts per will. This is a great segue into an important point to talk about here, which is the power of group listings. So group listings are a function within our will writing platform that allow will writers to pledge a gift to a cause area rather than a specific organization. We built this with a certain type of will writer in mind, those people who don't have necessarily a strong affiliation with a specific charity, but they are certainly open to the idea of being charitable. So by offering them the opportunity to support a group, like organizations supporting the environment or community-centric charities, it takes the pressure off of that will writer from choosing an organization or worrying about whether or not they may have made the right choice. It completely removes that decision paralysis that can come in situations like this. It's also a fantastic way for charities with much smaller brand awareness to compete against some of the big names and that other people would recognize. Group listings have been incredibly successful. The vast majority of our partners choose to be included in a group listing that's aligned with their cause, although it is optional, and the growing inclination towards this type of giving is partly what's driving up the average number of gifts per supporter, as there are normally 3 or 4 organizations in any one group. Back of house here at Gathered here, we are getting more creative in how our group listings are displayed, especially based on an awareness calendar that we've put together. For example, rather than have a broad cancer support group, which we do, in October last year, we specifically labelled a group as Support Breast Cancer Awareness Month because it was Breast Cancer Awareness Month in October, and we expected and ultimately experienced a spike in legacy giving to our charities who are aligned with that cause and around that awareness period. So if you have any awareness days, weeks, or months that are specific to your cause area, please contact myself or your partner success manager to discuss how we can naturally promote your organization through our group listings. And importantly, perhaps most importantly, we're also seeing very, very promising levels of supporters opting in to share their information with charities and non-for-profits that they've included in their will, which allows for amazing stewardship opportunities. In 2024, 48% of bequesters chose to share their information with non-for-profits, which is absolutely phenomenal growth when we consider that only 25% shared their information in 2021. Again, during the time when online wills were new, people weren't sure exactly how to approach them or what might happen as a result of doing it. That's growing phenomenally over the last 3 or 4 years. This highlights not only are we seeing more trust in online wills through the volume of wills written, but we're seeing much more intent from the will writers who support charities to let their legacy wishes be known to them, and they're open to building a deeper connection with your organization. For new supporters, so again, the people who are entirely new to your organization, the growth was even more impressive. It moved from 24% in 2021 to 50% in 2024, which was better than the average. So people are really opting in to provide their details to charities that they're supporting. This does highlight the amazing stewardship opportunities that can come from online wills, especially when we're looking at supporters, new supporters who were previously unknown to your organization. Let's switch gears a little bit and we'll talk about location data. But before we do, I'll try and turn this into an activity. I can see some people are using the chat function. So if you want to participate, simply use the chat function for this. Have a guess on which area, a state in Australia or New Zealand, was the most receptive to will writing. I've included the percentage of the Australian population on the right there as a slight guide, and New Zealand's down the bottom. But again, drop your guesses in the chat if you like on which area were the most prepared and the most open to end-of-life planning. All right, the chat quickly grew there, so let's just jump to the answer. Anyone who said Queensland would be correct. So despite accounting only for 21% of the population, they make up 25% of all wills written on our platform. So Queenslanders are clearly very prepared and are a practical bunch. Another activity, the middle column here, let's see if you want to participate, what area is most likely to pledge a gift? I'll give you a few seconds to use the chat and make a guess, but this is unrelated to the number of wills. It's simply which state or area has the best percentage of will writers from a particular region who pledge a gift. And the answer here is the ACT. So absolutely incredible giving rate of 24% from ACT-based residents. And then that's followed by Victoria at 20% and Tasmania at 19%. We can also see that Queenslanders, although they're very receptive to writing their wills, their giving rate was slightly lower than what we've seen in the average. Their giving rate was at 15%. And then finally, we'll talk about the percentage of total gifts pledged. So which area do you think that came from? I'll give you a couple of seconds. And as a clue, it's shared between two areas here. So you might have a double chance of getting it right. But which area did most gifts come from? And the answer is New South Wales and Victoria. So each of these states represent 22% of gifts pledged. Queensland followed closely after that with 19%. And interestingly, if we take a look at New Zealand, some really interesting behaviour here is that they wrote 12% of wills on our platform and pledged a gift 13% of the time, but they actually account for 17% of all gifts. So we know that Kiwis really love pledging multiple gifts in their wills. Moving on from location data and looking at cause areas a little bit more. There's quite a bit to take in here, but the main takeaway is that every single cause area saw significant and positive growth from 2021 to 2024. Environment charities, they saw lowest, for lack of a better word, the lowest amount of growth in terms of revenue pledged, but even that was 128% growth, which is pretty impressive, right? On the other end of the spectrum, education and sporting organisations saw an absolutely phenomenal level of growth over these 4 years, 12,000% and 8,000% respectively. But we were starting from very, very small numbers in 2021. So I actually don't think we had any sporting teams or organisations or education partners when we launched our Wills platform. And now we have lots of schools, universities, AFL clubs, cricket organisations and the like, and even national bodies like Paralympics Australia have adopted online wills, and we see that level of adoption growing as well. In terms of actual value, animal and wildlife charities, that they've received the highest amount of value pledged at just shy of $207 million. And that's closely followed by health and disability organisations at $182 million. So this is truly, truly life-changing amounts of money. I won't go into too much of the cause areas too deeply today, but when the report comes out, you'll be able to look more closely at your area. You'll see the trends over time. You'll be able to read about what's going on, and so I strongly encourage you to take a look at that when that comes out. And again, that'll likely be later this week. But for now, I think that's enough data points in terms of online wills. The last thing I want to talk about before we wrap up is the probate process. So, probated wills is a difficult area to talk about because there are obviously a number of privacy obligations around probated wills, but we do want to give you the opportunity to look at the relevant data whilst also respecting our customers. And so some of the things we can tell you is that 20% of wills handled by Gathered Here Legal were prepared online. And of those wills prepared online, 30% were written via Gathered Here. Regardless of which website they came from, 100% of all online wills were successfully granted probate. That's a really, really important point to stress. 100% of all online wills written online were successfully granted probate. This is a free tool with our platform. It's a free tool that you can access. It's genuinely saving families so much time and stress and uncertainty, and it's doing its job for its users. And yes, there were some errors in those wills as well, but interesting enough, online wills actually have the fewest types of errors that we see. If anyone joined our legal webinar a couple of months back, we went into that in a little bit more detail, but if you haven't seen it or want to watch it back, you can do so through our YouTube channel. But the take-home message is that online wills, they're working. They're even when they're imperfect or they're being used perhaps beyond their recommended remit. And I know what you're thinking. Yes, we have had some gifts to charities come through too as well. So including wills written via Gathered Here. So it's obviously awesome news around gift realization of wills written online as well. We're working with quite a limited data set here, though, at the moment. So what we expect to see with the numbers over the next couple of years is a lot of growth, a lot more wills going through that probate process, and that'll begin to climb significantly. And we're really excited to share that data back with you when that does happen. For now, just know that online wills, they are entering the courts, they're successfully completing the probate process, and they're proving irrefutably that they are valid and a reliable means of estate planning. So that's enough data from me for today. Let's wrap things up and just summarize. So again, obviously a lot to take away from today, but I think the biggest point is around how online wills and digital bequests are continuing to show absolutely incredible growth. Thousands of people are choosing to write their wills online, and across the board, every cause area is seeing increased revenue as a result of their generous gifts. Online wills, highly effective at reaching new audiences. We've had a webinar on that as well. They can be used not just to increase your bequest revenue, but also to expand your supporter bases, especially considering that those really positive opt-in rates that we're seeing. And finally, again, every early data for probated online wills is extremely positive. Online wills, they're doing their job. They're providing reliable estate planning for free, and they're connecting charities with new supporters and additional revenue. I've already mentioned that we'll be releasing the very detailed gifts and wills report soon. There's so much more data in that that can really help inform your own strategies. So keep an eye out for that. But for now, thank you everyone for coming today, and we'll be in touch. It's FIA this week as well. Myself and some of the team will be there. So if you're in attendance, please come and say hello. But thanks for joining the webinar in the meantime. Bye for now.